What happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit? Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are the medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Let's go.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to this really exciting dual podcast this week. It's the next episode of Reframing the Narrative and also Medicine Girl's podcast. Super excited to be talking to you, Medicine Girl, and just wanted to frame up this conversation that Jake and I have been fans of your writing for a while, and we see a lot of kindred spirit in the type of things that you're writing. And it only makes sense for us to have this conversation. And also, you've been doing a lot of great high impact pieces recently, calling out scammers, calling out all sorts of deceptions. And that's what we're all about, and really reframing some of those narratives that are being pushed on us on a daily basis. So I guess let me just start with Robin. Just really great to be talking to you in live time.
Thank you. And thank you for being kindred spirits. And it like I say, like it gets really lonely out here because I receive so much backlash, especially from the Alex Zek articles, a lot of hate. And so it's nice to know that, people are reading it. It is getting through. I did get a lot of really good comments on it as well. But like we were kind of talking about before you introduced me, it's about discernment. And I really believe, or I know, that the less education you have, the better you are able to see this kind of thing, because you're not indoctrinated into the system. So you really can start to see the patterns. And so everyone asks me, like, how do I see all this stuff? It's because they use the same exact pattern for every single thing. They don't veer from it, and the grifters use the exact same pattern for the same thing as well. Create fear, and then create a narrative around the fear, usually, a lot of scientific sounding jargon, and then here's the solution for profit with my affiliate links underneath it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, as you were saying that, I'm wondering, is she talking about the medical industrial complex? Is she talking about vitamins and supplements? Is she talking about alternative health? I mean, there's so many directions we could take this conversation. One thing that Jake, always good to see you as usual, but one thing that he and I talked about that would be a fun starting topic in this conversation, and certainly we saw when you teamed up with Agent 131711 how much vitriol there was out there about vitamins and supplements. And most people really don't even realize the toxic sludge that goes into these things that people are taking. And I can't tell you, even just posting on my personal Telegram or having conversations with people, everyone is so entrenched in that idea, and they're like, oh yeah, but the thing I take is really good and it's legit. Like, maybe those other ones are in question, but don't mess with my colloidal silver, or don't mess with my vitamin D, or whatever the case is. Yeah. And it's crazy. I'd be curious to know what got you started down that path, looking into the supplement and vitamin industry and just realizing that the emperor had no clothes.
Well, my son was born in 2007 and was severely vaccine injured. And I vowed after that, when I really woke up to it, I started researching after that and started really waking up, and I vowed never to harm my son again. So I made all his own food, I did all this thing, then 2020 happens. And Amanda Bulmer was on there speaking our language, like she's one of us, and she said mega doses of vitamin D3 are next to gold. Like, you cannot do better than that. And so I got the good stuff in the lanolin with the K2, read up on it from the manufacturers is where I read it. And so I gave my son a half of a dose just to see how he would do. 6 weeks later, he breaks his shoulder at the skate park, severely breaks it. And it didn't make sense to me. I mean, he's 9 years old. And somebody on one of my channels said, were you supplementing him with D3? And I was proud to say, you bet I am. I got the good stuff in lanolin with K2. And they said, do you know the mechanisms of action? And I said, well, the K2 gets the calcium. And they're like, where does that calcium come from? You might want to research it. It's rat poison. And when I saw that, all I saw was cholecalciferol on a bag of decon rat poison and cholecalciferol on my vitamin. And I just I heard a sound this whole thing just dropped. Like, oh my God, I got tricked into poisoning my son again. And that was it. Now my back is up. Now I'm going in full throttle. I'm not stopping until either I'm, my last breath or this gets uncovered. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if it's any of the other vitamins. After I really went hardcore, talked to Jim Stevenson Jr., did 2 podcasts with him, went through all the pathophysiology, which I think is very questionable anyway. And then really started to look at how are all these vitamins made? Oh, they were invented by the pharmaceutical industry. Okay. You got me. You got me on that one. But now I thought innocently, once everyone hears this information, you guys, they're just going to be, thank you so much, Robin. I really appreciate you bringing this to the table. I'm going to throw out all their vitamins. But it was the opposite. Like they went after me. If they could have burned my house down and hung me at the stake, they would have. The backlash, and it was only attacking me. I'm a narcissist. I need to journal. I have childhood trauma. I'm in so much pain. It had nothing to do with actually what I was saying, refuting any of my points on the vitamins or supplements and how they're made and how they're slowly poisoning people. And they're made in the identical way as a prescription drug. So that's the long-winded answer of how I got started on uncovering vitamin supplements. And then that's how I found Agent. That's how I found DPL, who was completely annihilated thanks to the Baileys and that gang. But that's how we kind of found each other. And then we started to be able to riff off the research that we were doing. And the interesting thing is Agent just sent me a article that he said, oh, somebody just wrote an amazing article on D3. Well, I don't think he actually read it because it's exactly what we're talking about. Agent was right. It is, it can be a poison, but it's seen in mega doses. And he's quoting a book by Jeff T. Bowles, which is it's a very long title about supplementing with mega doses of vitamin D3, 100,000 IU to 300,000 IU is the cure for everything. And lack of rat poison is the cause of everything. This is exactly what his book says. And that is what this guy is quoting as a reason for his article, and it's all lost in the weeds on pathophysiology, and it's about cholesterol, and it has nothing to do with the fact that you can't poison the body back to health, period.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's really interesting too to me that there's friends that I've had, and I'm thinking of one specifically recently in the, we'll call it truther or freedom community, whatever you want to say, who's been kind of led down that path. And you've talked about grifters. I personally think that Jeff Berwick is another one, and we could maybe talk about that later. But anyway, this particular friend of mine has been a longtime fan of that guy, and he's really led his audience into this divisive sort of mindset. And it's almost as what she said to me recently was coming out of Jeff Berwick's mouth about, oh, well, did that person take the jab? And if so, you can't really listen to that person or trust them. And I see this sort of divisiveness even in our community. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you may be falling for the same stuff in just a different flavor of pharma. And it's so interesting how there's these people out there trying to divide humanity in general. And yet still, it's like people fall into the same traps with just a different brand of lipstick on that pig. And I think that if people just give people other people in the quote unquote other camp some grace and say, well, we all fall for it in some way. And, some people are ready to receive the information, some aren't. I think our world would be in a much better place.
I 100% agree with that. And that's how we stay divided, calling people that took this sheep. Meanwhile, you're like slathering horse paste on yourself and going blind in one eye, or, any of the numbers of the things that they've netted us in. And so it's us against us instead of it's them. There was in Bolinas, I went into this really nature's kind of store, and they had, of course, like everyone had masks on, and then they had this bag of plastic bags that you could put your produce in, but it said, please don't you destroy the earth with these plastic bags, bring your own. And so I'm visiting, so I started pulling the plastic bags, and the guy behind the counter is like, oh my God, using plastic bag. It's like, but you set the problem up for me. Like, I have no other options, and I'm the problem. It's not, we are not the problem. We are being tricked with trillion-dollar empires into poisoning ourselves in a myriad of different ways, or transferring our wealth, or uprooting and moving to foreign countries.
So much I could say to that last comment, because we're singing from the same hymnal. But Jake, you've been sitting there very quietly waiting to get your first words in edgewise. So I'm going to defer and give the mic to you.
Thanks. Yeah, good to be talking with Medicine Girl after all this time as a big fan and ally. And one thing I think you kind of laid out when you're talking about maybe falling into the supplement rabbit hole, it's like we have all these traps. You wake up to something, and then there's something that's given to you as a solution. And so it might be supplements. It might be, there's this guy out there and he says it's snake venom. Which I don't believe in. PJ doesn't believe there wasn't it. It was all about the response to the op that they gave us, and then they put people in fear. So people, they necessarily believe there wasn't it. Therefore, they're going to argue about what it was and what the remedy is for the it. And meanwhile, if you really look carefully, our contention is that there was no it, and you're just getting tricked, and you're led around, and all it does is it takes you away from your own sovereignty and your own discernment, and really taking steps to, let's say, detoxify yourself from whether it's the fear or whether it's actual physical, the stuff that you're putting into your environment and into your body. And so I'd just like to ask you, how have you navigated this world of so many traps, and where is where are you on that map? Where are you navigating to in going forward with knowing that there's so many traps these days?
And that's an excellent question, and that's almost sums up my mission. Because once you see your sovereignty, once you're in your power, then you can't get tricked into taking the next shiny new object, resting in the highway. You just can't resist with those testimonials. And what they go after is your belief. And the word lie is in the word belief. So they get you to believe these things with their testimonials, their confusing sounding scientific jargon, so that, man, that really makes sense. It's blocking my glutathione pathway, and these $500 stickers are going to reactivate it. And I'm not immune to, I tried the stickers. I have tried things in the past until I finally was just like, oh my gosh, it's everything. Once I realized the crux of it is when you remove the toxins and the poisons, the body heals itself completely, 100%. And so you don't need to take anything. That's why Morpheus offers the red pill or the blue pill. It's still a pill. You're still in the matrix. You're not waking up. There's no red pill expo where all the awakened people are, patting each other on the back. You're still in the matrix. Yeah, and I just looked at it as a sea of endless rabbit holes, and each rabbit hole had a hamster wheel in it. And it looked new and shiny compared to the last rabbit hole. And so I think really 2020 had a lot to do with aligning people. Oh, Del Bigtree's on our side, or Drew Peterson, or whatever that guy is. And here's their brand of, how to detox from it, and making a ton of money doing the same thing, equally poisoning people.
Yeah, and totally agreed with everything you just said, but I will say just be a little careful about how you're using the word rabbit hole. As someone who has a channel called the Central Texas Rabbit Hole, they're not all bad.
They're not,
but-
no, they're like, rabbit holes in and of themselves, I have learned so much about the world around us.
No, absolutely. But I do agree to a point that there's no end of rabbit holes, and they can turn into a little bit of a hamster wheel. And you brought up sovereignty, and I think what you've been writing about recently, or you had a series about the quote unquote sovereign citizen, I think that's really important writing, because it's just such a tempting trap to say that we can say these right words and be free of government tyranny. And, it's funny because I always had this skepticism about it. There was parts of it that sort of sounded good and made sense. And before you had written these articles, I remember we've had many episodes ago, we had Ernest Hancock on our show, and he's a well-known advocate going back to, I think, the 80s. But I remember one time we were together in person, and that's how I eventually got on a podcast with him and James Corbett. But I remember him saying about the whole sovereignty movement, it works until it doesn't. He's like, go ask Larkin Rose how that worked out for him, and it's true. And there was something about it. I was like, I feel like I need to do so much more research for this to work, if it even does. But I just never went down that path because it seemed too dangerous. And I really liked how you highlighted in your closing article about all the things that can happen to people. It's really eye-opening.
It's so eye-opening, and the thing that really got me with that whole movement was it's their system, you guys. They're not going to say, "Oh, you got me, slave," on a technicality. I'm going to have to give you your freedom. Like, they're not going to do that. And they've been at this grift for decades. They just rebrand it, repackage it. But it's the same thing. And that this woman, Anna von Reitz, or something, I included her in the article, none of her stuff, I looked at the actual court documents. The judges just throw it out as frivolous. And I actually have, there's a friend sent me this guy who's a magistrate attorney. He's been an attorney and a judge, and he's agreed to come on my podcast to put this whole thing to rest. And he's like, I don't want to spend any time on it because it's ridiculous. It will never work, no matter what you say. It's their system. It's their court. None of it will ever work. So he's like, we can do that. We can talk about that for 10 minutes, and then we can talk about, toxic prescription drugs or whatever else. But
yeah, and actually you touched on another thing, circling back to Jeff Berwick, and I know that he's been pushing people to become expatriates and go hide off in some far-flung country. And I know some people who've fallen for it. And that just to me seems like yet another hamster wheel. Like, I just don't think you can run from the problem of tyranny. It just has different shades to it, right?
I agree with that 100%. If I could go higher in the percentages, I would, because that's exactly right. There is nowhere to run. I mean, if you travel the world, I mean, I went to South Africa in 2022, Mozambique, like, there's nowhere to hide. You don't go to Ecuador or sell your grandma's house and move to Nicaragua. That's not the solution. But that gets you, I mean, look at what it does. I think it's another psyop to get you uprooted, sell your wealth or transfer your wealth. It was the biggest wealth transfer, I think, in the history of, since we've been keeping track of things in 2020. Like, they really siphoned off a lot of our wealth because everyone was in a state of fear, and they looked to authority, which are these influencers. And I personally don't think any of these high-level influencers are just out there doing good things. I think they're getting instructions from somewhere.
Totally agreed. And I'm about to take over the mic again. Jake, I know you've got a thought. Jump in there.
Well, just fresh in my mind, you can see the anatomy of how the influences work. Just if, like, there's a guy, Ian Carroll, right? He came out of nowhere, and I'm not going to make any comments on how valid he is or anything. I don't know the guy. I know him as Ian Carroll through my screen. Like, I don't use my real name on our show, so who am I to judge? But he did have a recent thing that he was talking about how the MAGA influencers have been offered junkets to go kiss the wall, cry on the wall in Israel, and become pro-Israel influencers. It was right out there in the open. Like there's programs, from like the IDF's propaganda arm that are like, we need to spend this budget, blah, blah, blah. So if it works for, let's say, intelligence and state interest propaganda, why wouldn't it work for other sorts of consortiums and cartels? And I really think like what we're dealing with is just the most visible cartel. Government's a cartel. It's a crime gang that's got the guns and badges. That's all.
Right. Yeah. And they're in control, and they own every square inch of land. There is not one square inch of space that you can have on this planet that is, like a free zone or you can reclaim. So you really have to just start looking at, my solutions have always been go within, stop looking to anyone as an authority. Start talking to everyone. You can talk to everyone about the high grocery prices, and hey, what about growing a food forest in our neighborhood? Or, I have bees in my backyard. Everyone in the neighborhood's fascinated about that. So you can talk about the bees, and you can talk about ways to facilitate healthy gardens that will help the bees, because everyone's all about bees. Everyone will agree on that. So it's like find the common ground instead of how do you know what the propaganda is? Everybody's talking about it and taking a side. And everyone's got something to say. First it was Russia and Ukraine. And now it's Israel and Palestine. And that's just the focus of everything. But I think it's a distractor, and it's, pick a side so then you can have arguments at the next barbecue.
Well, part of it is we don't affect any change. And sorry, PJ, to interrupt there, but when we're just using screens and screen names and avatars and we're online and we're on social media and we're getting really angry and we're making videos crying in our cars.
Yeah.
The blue-haired girls are upset about whatever and they're crying. Or it could be even about some stupid celebrity thing like Justin Baldoni and like Lively, right? That's like
Candace Owen was even talking about that, like it's news.
Yeah, it's a huge draw for a lot of people. So anyway, it's not reality. Now we're almost built into this matrix of having our arguments online. It has no effect on anything. But like you said, if you start composting and if you put up what's milkweed and monarch butterflies come and they have a safe haven in your yard and they make it through their migration because you helped them through that, that's making a real world difference. And I will say one thing about the sovereign citizen type thing, a takeaway that I have is, well, sovereign and citizen are a contradiction in terms. So that's kind of, anyone using that term is kind of off base, I would say.
Yeah.
Because citizen is a subject, right? So you're not really sovereign. And the only one that's sovereign is like the king or, God himself. But we can learn a lot of lessons, like you were saying, just assert your sovereignty at every level that you can as a human being who answers only to your creator. And so there's a lot to learn from the philosophy of that, but then you get into like patriotard lore and, well, you just have to say, wave a magic wand and say, oobla dee, oobla da, and the cops go away and suddenly you have $6 billion in your bank account.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
work like
You get
that.
the money back that they traded for you on the stock market, and you can buy cars with that money. And this, you just give them this form, and that's just how it works out. Yet, when you use your discernment, why aren't they interviewing active licensed attorneys? Because there's no attorney that's going to put their license on the line and say, "Yep, this works." Or why aren't they interviewing judges? Or, showing me, hey, you had a mortgage and then you sent the lender this complicated letter and you've got your land patents and now you don't have a mortgage, and you can show me zero and I can look and it's public record. I can see online, yep, no mortgage. They don't ever do that. They just talk about the complicated legal jargon and the testimonials and all that, the kind of thing. The same thing they do with vitamins and supplements, the same thing the other side does with those and prescription drugs and everything else. It's the same exact play in their same exact playbook.
I think you're really touching on an important point, and I would say that, just to make a long story short, and I won't bore at least our listeners with my story of how I had kind of reawakened in 2020, but I'll just say that, the blinders came off a second time in my life, and I started seeing the world more as it was. And then it was a couple years later, as things were sort of slowing down and calming down in terms of all the malarkey, as Jake and I like to call it. And I just had this realization that, boy, wasn't it way too easy to have found some of these influencers or big name alternative spokespeople. And, you sort of alluded to it in one of your recent articles about the West Point connection. But I really just have to believe that with all these unaccounted for budgets and three-letter agencies or wherever they're coming from, they've got all the right people in the places they want them. And it's, I think it was Albert Pike who had said that if the people want a hero, we will supply it to them, right? And I just realized that the number of people out there with a platform that you can trust is really small, or I guess you can take little bits of truth and kernels of wisdom from them, but you always have to look at them with a suspicious lens, and that's not to sound paranoid. I just think it's the reality of the situation.
Well, and what are they trying to sell you? Because, I really have been clear, I'm not doing affiliate links. My podcast is not sponsored. I don't want my voice swayed in any way. So I love oil of oregano, but if I sold it, I don't think I could be clear to say, hey, I think oil of oregano is beneficial, because then is it because I want them to buy it, or is it, it's still swayed. So I want to be as clean as possible. And all of these influencers that complain that they're being so censored have thousands of followers. I don't see their stuff getting taken down ever. And like you said, like this whole West Point connection, I went to a Music and Sky festival early on, and because I make homemade creams. And at the festival, it was just, like you would expect, hippies. And then this super polished Alex Zek does not look like the type of guy that you would see just milling around with a bunch of hippies at an outdoor festival. And from the beginning, they're talking about the same thing. It's like each person has their script, and they don't go off that script, and it's a really hard push to get you into that realm. And it's very beneficial to the top down if you are doing the sovereign citizen thing. I had my friend lost her home. She convinced our 80-year-old friend to lose her house. And the very interesting thing about both of those two is they still believe in it 100%. They're going to win in court. It's just following the right sequence. Even though, when I go hiking, I drive past the other one's house and it's got the for sale sign. It's, how the foreclosures work. You auction it off, and that's just what it is. But it's like you mentioned, it's that psychology though. Like they will take that with them to the grave.
I think
They
it's
were
human
right.
nature. Like there's definitely people who do evil, but the people who don't do evil, they just believe there's got to be some kind of good solution out there, and that's how you get people, just incredulous people who
Yeah.
will just call any questioning of the mainstream a conspiracy theory, because they, like PJ and I did an episode the other day that was based on the work of Agent 13, 17, 11, which is where are the whistleblowers?
Right.
Because there's an entire structure to keep people away from the truth, but there's, at the same time, because of that, it's so hard to access it. People end up just investing so much mental and spiritual and financial resources. We also talk about where do you spend your attention or pay your attention.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, people, they cling on because they're like, well, something's got to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what we're getting at is it's an outside thing. It's an extrinsic thing. And the most obvious one is, what pill can I take? What massage therapist can I see? Whatever. It's always hiring somebody or getting someone or something to fix you.
Right.
But what we're getting away from is really the solution is you got to find it for yourself, and it's got to come from within yourself. And that's why I don't think any of our podcasts will be like the greatest. We won't be on Spotify's top rank for in the foreseeable future, because we're not selling anything except for accountability, personal accountability.
Right.
And people don't like that message.
Well, it doesn't sell the way Joe Rogan sells, but I have a feeling, though, that it's not really what it seems. I mean, Joe Rogan is not talented, in my humble opinion, at all. I mean, his voice sounds like hamburger. I don't know what other way to say it. And his interviews are just mind-numbing. But it's like, that's the McDonald's. It's the mass appeal. And so what they're creating is this murmuration with flocks of birds. You just flick a little thing, boom, boom, boom. Ukraine, Russia, Palestine, whatever it is. And so they're under their complete control. And so people like us, we are disruptive to that perfectly honed system that they have. And, I think it's exactly what you said. There's always something you gotta to work on. It's your childhood trauma. So go do a bunch of psychedelics in the desert and, peel back the layers of the onions, or it's go to the sound bath, or find it. None of it brings you back to personal responsibility. Like, everything in your life is because you have set it up that way. And if you want to change it, you have to take personal responsibility. And I say, go within and stop listening to everything 24/7. Everyone's either got their headphones on or they're listening to meditations as they fall asleep. There's no quiet time to hear that divine voice from within. I call it God. Whatever it is, I don't know. But that's when you can hear truth. You're never going to hear it from outside, especially from people that profit from your ignorance.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And just, to build on that idea of constant noise and movement, there's a pretty well-known influencer here in Austin that him and his partner have pioneered this idea of exit and build. And to some degree, I think that there's something to be said for trying to build our own community and finding ways to push back against tyranny and whatever flavor that comes. But I've also seen people who spend a lot of money on workshops and never get solid answers and are told to go find a barren plot of land somewhere and basically remove themselves from modern society. And I've seen a lot of people burning their wheels off doing that there's some magic solution that if we just find some barren space and start over, that it's going to be any better. But it's just more time on the hamster wheel, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's like, you don't ever ask someone to grant you freedom. You'll never be free, right? So you have to create that from within, and I think we can create that right where we stand, and we should create that right where we stand, so that it's not constantly looking for the promised land. the grass is greener over there. Everyone's, moved to Texas and Florida. And then, reality sets in. Or I grew up on a ranch with my two brothers and my sister, and my dad we were the ranch hands. It's a lot of work, and it's all the time. And, unless you really know what you're doing, it could, again, turn into disaster. So it's not creating a new system. I think it's starving the beast, all of us. And the more that we lock arms with everyone, including those guys and the mask wearers, and find the common ground with them and talk about how to stay, in health and wellness, or cut the price of groceries down, like common ground.
When we first started talking before PJ joined us, you mentioned that I live in the belly of the beast, right?
Yeah.
And I love what you just said about finding common ground, because on the surface, somebody who maybe didn't take the experimental potion and didn't block their airways and everything would be completely antagonistic or have nothing in common and no
Right.
common ground with anybody around me. And I'll just say it, I'm coming to you from Berkeley, California, right? The belly of the beast on the surface. But I am now, and coming back to like what we're saying about there's nowhere to run, I've really come around to this whole idea, like this couldn't be a better place for me, because this is where I have to make my stand.
Yeah.
And it starts with me. And I had a walk with somebody this morning who's completely politically like bought into everything in a certain, party color, the very blue, let's say. And we had the greatest time out walking, because we have more in common when it comes to connecting with nature and going out on a mountain bike or observing the birds and the ground squirrels than I would with, a MAGA person who would probably be allied with me philosophically a little more. And so, yeah, back to that whole idea of there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. That's a good thing. And I think that we shouldn't be down on that realization. We should embrace it and say, good, because this is where I make my stand.
I love that. And that is my philosophy 100%. And when I was working in home health and in hospice, going into all walks of life, from high-end homes in Napa and Sonoma to, apartments, inner city apartments in Vallejo, I can find and truly love each and every patient I worked with. And it didn't matter what they're bought into, because I just feel like, yeah, we're all tricked in certain ways. There's the perspectives I had 5 years ago that I cringe. Some of the podcasts, it's like, oh, it's so awful. And I'm sure in 5 years from now, I'll look back now and think, oh my gosh, was I a loudmouth on that, and how completely different I am. So it's just allowing people to be where they are in the moment, realizing they're not the enemy. They didn't do anything wrong any more than you did anything wrong. We're all trying to figure out how to have a beautiful, joyful life. And that's where that common ground comes in. And then we really can create what you and I'm sure, envision, instead of what they are trying to dictate the world is going to look like. Because they don't have any more authority over God's land than you or I do. They've just assumed authority. And we've been feeding them with all of our energy. And Jake nailed it with our attention. And that's what they want. They don't care if it's positive, negative, just as long as we're talking about them and focused on them.
And fighting over them too. I think that's a really key element.
Yeah.
I was going to say this earlier. I feel like anytime that you're getting something that's a headline in mainstream news or alternative news, I can say with sort of mostly clear certainty that ain't it. Like whatever that's being talked about, that ain't it. And it's there for a reason for us to see and then debate over. And I loved how Jake brought up, I mean, this was now years ago, but that stupid, there's venom in the water. I mean, talk about one of those stupid stories where it's like, get people fighting about it, get people worried about it. And, actually, I also wanted to comment, going backwards in our conversation a little bit. A lot of this, and this is a really key point, is driven by fear. And I think about the last time I let a needle go in my arm, and this was 13, 14 years ago now, and I was, we'll call it asleep at the time, getting a regular checkup, and the doctor was like, oh, well, you just moved to California and whooping cough is really bad here. You've got to get the, tetanus shot or it'll be really terrible. And, that sunk in the back of my mind. It's like, oh, well, I don't want that, right? Oh, that sounds terrible. And sure, and so that's where I'm saying that we've all fallen victim to so many of these tricks, and fear is really the big motivator.
It's a huge motivator, and that's what they do, and that's what I talk about. When I'm talking more inside the medical industrial complex, they cast spells, and that's the only thing that they take your blood for, so that you give them consent. You've given them a fluid from your body that you've allowed now them to cast spells over. And I don't know what your guys' opinion on this, but I think from the beginning they have to have our consent for everything. For whatever reason, I don't know, but they never force you. They coerce you. They make it seem like you have to do it. I don't know how many people. And I'm single, so I was trying to date, and I would ask, like, deal breaker, if you've been. I don't know if I would still stay stuck to that, but everyone would say no, but I had to. Like, they still consider themselves, unjabbed or whatever. But they would say, oh, but I had to for work, or I travel, or I needed to see my mom. And I'm like, well, they were just asking for a piece of paper. They weren't asking for you to actually go and have that done in their presence. So it's just another way of understanding how you work within their system and stay free to yourself, stay true to yourself, and stay sovereign.
Yeah, I mean, I'll weigh in and let Jake get in there afterwards. But in terms of the consent thing, I think absolutely that, number one, it comes from the very high levels of secret societies and people in control, that they have this idea that if we consent to whatever that thing is, then they're absolved of any, karma or whatever you want to call it, that they basically hid the truth in plain sight, or told us in so many words. Whether we could figure it out or not is our own fault. But I think that's a philosophy from the quote unquote controllers. But even more so, I think that this probably stems to something spiritual too, and the world beyond what we can see in 3 dimensions. And I think even then too, there's an element of we have to consent for good or evil, even if it's not something totally apparent. We have to make that choice, and it's not just the physical world, but it's this world and beyond, and all of that is to do with consent. So I think it's a much broader issue beyond just who's politically in control or making the decisions.
Yeah, and just one thing to add to that, for whatever reason, again, with the consent and these secret societies and who they worship, whether it's Moloch or Baphomet, like, I don't really care, but for whatever reason, it works, or they wouldn't do it.
Absolutely. And they go by different names too. Like, you see these, like, there's definitely something about, like, George Washington, for instance, was a big worshiper of the sacred feminine. And there's something to that. You see, like, on the state capital of Texas, right? In Austin, if you look at that dome, there's a Diana, the goddess of war, or on the Capitol, right? There's goddess worship, there's domes, and there's phallic symbols everywhere. Right. And then you get the same goddesses in different languages and different cultures handed down, and you can't even keep up with it. Like Ishtar and Isis and Venus and Virgo. And if you get into astrotheology, like that breaks it down, and we can't keep up with what they worship, but there's definitely, to your point, Robin, there's something to it for sure, and they derive some kind of power or energy to it. And then it really gets down to, like, do we give, like PJ and I constantly say on this in our conversations, will you pay your attention? Will you invest in that yourself and contribute your energy to what they're doing? And I think what we're kind of talking about here is like, maybe we can't physically exit and build, but we can build something energetically. And I'm not saying that because I live in Berkeley.
Yeah.
There's definitely something, there's an alternative that's investing in the good that we need to kind of figure out for ourselves. And because
Yes.
nobody in the mainstream is leading us to that.
And that is where I don't think they want us to go. And that is what I'm so beyond excited about, because they spend all of their energy and trillions of dollars to keep us from that information, to keep us from the information of how powerful just one of us is in our own sovereignty, energy, potential, whatever you want to call it. We're lit up like a megawatt. And and my tagline in my business is "You are the medicine." And I really started to understand what that meant when I go in, or used to go in patients' houses for hospice. And I've gotten lots of patients off hospice. I've seen lots of patients heal from terminal, end stage, given 2 weeks to live. We, in the light, you haven't sold your soul to the devil for $1 or an affiliate link, but you're walking with God, or you're walking with the divinity. You create a medicine surrounding you that can light other people up, that can heal other people without having to say a word or give them an herb or a supplement. It's just you in their presence, eye to eye. I see you. I care about you. I want to hear your story. That's it. It's very, very simple.
With a comment, with a description, I think it's like the permaculture of humanity, right? Because
Yeah.
I know, and I've listened to your own podcast, and you've discussed parasites and where parasites crop up. And that's another buzz. I think we're coming down in this like truther kind of these circles. They're getting to like, oh, well, parasites cause cancer. Parasites cause this. And it's like everyone wants to get to the bottom of what causes cancer. And so now parasites are getting blamed. But parasites do not exist, where they cannot exist in let's say a coherent or a healthy organism, right? And so, and it's the same thing like with monocrops, monoculture. If you're only hanging out with MAGA, if you're only with the hard liberals, there's no cross pollination, and there's no healthy ecosystem there.
Wow.
And yeah, so
this is huge. This is it. Like, this is really
jumped in my head, like the permaculture, human permaculture. Like,
yes.
That's what we got to look for here.
Yeah, because you're right. What am I going to learn in an echo chamber where everyone's like, right on, Robin, I agree with 100% what you say. I really like people that challenge me and that, have me explain it to them. And half the time I'm like, you know what? I don't know how to explain it to you. I don't know what I'm talking about. I need to go back in and really look at what this is until I can explain it to a 10-year-old and have everyone around me understand it. But you're absolutely right. Like, that is the solution.
And we may not get there ourselves, but we can plant those seeds, right? Maybe we'll be the compost that
we'll be the compost, or whatever it is, because they're so intent on creating hell on earth and having us focus on that with the music and the movies and dark. But it's just simple as averting your attention to the good and seeing the good in everyone around you. And it's very possible. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just wanted to also build on the idea that you put out there about we can heal ourselves if we just cut out the toxicity, whatever shape that takes. I truly believe not only were our bodies meant to heal themselves and that we're never at a lack of pharmaceuticals or anything like that, or supplements, whatever your flavor du jour is, but I actually think that we were born on a geniusly created world that we literally have everything we've ever needed in this world. And I think that without opening a rabbit hole that we could talk about for another hour, but I do think that there was a reset in somewhat recent history, and that part of what was obscured from us is access to free energy and free healing. And I think that, before this imposter named Einstein came along and proposed all these wacky theories and essentially got the world to look the other direction from ether, I think ether is part of, I think it's still being used on some level that we don't, well, at least the everyday person doesn't truly understand. But I think that we have all the food that we need, we have all the energy we need, we have all the way to heal ourselves. And I think that's where a lot of us get lost, because we've been led to believe otherwise, that we need some external solution when it was all there in front of us in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. And you can look around, you can look at the past. Well, I mean, we were in Rome a couple, 3 years ago, and you just see the architecture, and then you see the modern architecture, and it's not the same at all, whether it was Tartarian or these star forts. And I think you're absolutely right. We had access to all of this abundance. You look at one plant gives you 1,000 seeds. You never have to worry. They want us in a state of fear and lack. That's why Darwin and all these narratives had to come in, and Einstein, because it's, you got to get yours before the other guy does. Dog eat dog kind of world, and everything is abundant, including, I completely agree with you with the ether, and it's our observable reality. Send a drone up with a copper wire. Well, don't actually do that. But tell me how much electricity is coming through that copper wire. Like, you'll be blasted into next week. And primary water. There's so much primary water, but we have to, like, even truthers are like, oh, water's our, scarcest, most valuable asset we have to protect and save water and conserve water. It's like, it's everywhere, but they keep it from us. Because, of course, you have to be in lack and fear and put, these stupid $20,000 solar panels on your house that don't do anything.
Well, just as an example of what you're talking about, why did they invent the word fossil fuel? I mean, first of all, dinosaurs are fake and gay, and Jake would agree with me on that. But, it's like it creates scarcity for something that, if anyone's really looked into it, petroleum is a completely renewable, abundant resource. Not that we necessarily need that to power our lives, but it's there and it's in abundance. But again, we've been raised in this scarcity mindset, whether it's resources, money, food, energy, whatever it is, that's what, yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's unfortunate. And again, I just think that if people had a broader realization that it's all there, maybe that's part of our, instead of exiting and build and rebuild, we could call it, is the people's real movement, maybe just recapturing a lot of what was already there for us. And, I don't know how we ever figure out ether. Maybe there's someone smarter than, I'll at least say me, because I'm not sure how we tap into that. But the human race had it once before, and I have to believe it's still there in some fashion.
Yeah. I mean, I think the easiest way is the tallest trees. You just starts putting wires up the trees, get into that, whatever that stage of the ether is, and start capturing energy slowly under the radar. Don't go announcing it on the 5 o'clock news. But, there's ways to fuel your car with hydrogen or water, if the hydrogen is even such a thing. I think we also have been lied to about what water is, 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, because I think they hide God. It's a base element. You can't make it. And if you can't make it, then people will start to ask questions. But if man can come in and make everything, they can make water out of hydrogen and oxygen, or they can make air and an oxygen concentrator. Those guys, Pete and Peter, took apart an oxygen concentrator, and it's just compressed air. They're not making oxygen.
Totally. Again, I feel like I'm about to steal the mic a little too much, and I'll hand it back to Jake for a comment. But just since we're highlighting some of the imposters of humanity's past. I'm not going to miss an opportunity. Jake and I had an episode somewhat recently where one of us was going to say it and didn't, so I'll just put it on the record. And I'm stealing from Owen Benjamin on this one, but do you know what E equals MC squared really stands for?
No.
Einstein married his cousin twice.
It is true.
Oh, those Freemasons, man. Ugh, they are just weird, unattractive. And I mean, I'm just going to say it. All of the Freemasons that I've seen are unattractive.
Well, I would have to say that if you have a strong desire to control others and manipulate others, it makes you ugly already. But I wouldn't doubt that being the case in physical appearance too.
Yeah. Ugly on the inside and it manifests on the outside. Just
as a quick note, this almost ended up as our 33rd episode, but we recorded that last week, but we were going to make a big production about it. So for at least for reframing the narrative, it's number 34. So
well, we can make it 33.3. Right? Isn't it funny that LPs used to spin, like when you had an LP, it was 33 and a third.
Yeah.
It's all, what is it, etched in everything.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's so funny how things are so like etched in the fabric of our lives that we don't even notice it until you start waking up and then you start noticing everything. And it's like, oh man, I gotta be able to be in this world and knowing what I know without, and I was angry for quite a while. And it's like, that's not serving anything. I'm just irritated all the time and, bickering with people instead of like, that's not who I am. And that's not serving anybody. And it's just turning everyone off that could have actually, heard some information on, hey, how to stay healthy, how to stay in your power.
Well, maybe that's something that you can kind of wrap up with is what we've been grappling with, that whole idea of, okay, so you understand that everything is a deception, everything is a narrative.
Yeah.
Like speaking of West Point, and I'm not going to name names or go point the finger at any particular individuals, but have you ever thought, nowhere in the entire history of the mainstream media did they ever say, well, that guy like Crooks or whatever, that the guy with three names who's always the lone gunman, right? Well, that was actually a black op. They never, you never get that in the mainstream. But we know that there's black ops budgets. Right. We know that people, even in the mainstream, they write books. And they're like, I have 146 confirmed kills, right? And we know that they operate on domestic soil. We know that they go, if you read, even in the mainstream ages ago, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, they go and they take out people like Allende, or they go and they extradite Noriega and they put him in jail here. And so we know black ops exist, but it's never acknowledged, right? So if they're doing black ops everywhere, then it does make sense that a lot of the hidden hand that goes on is it reaches into areas like what maybe people whose minds have been opened up by 2020, or even way earlier than that, like 2001, and you get Bill Hicks turning into Alex Jones or whatever happened there, and 9/11 was an inside job, and you get a certain cohort of the population who believes they're awake, but they're falling into different traps. And one trap I think that we're seeing these days is we're seeing, in addition to the parasite one, we're seeing this whole idea of shedding. And so I wanted to get your take on things like that. Like, is there maybe an energetic resonance that people that respond to, and that gets bounced back and forth between people and among groups of people, and that can be considered like shedding? Maybe it's just like a bad mojo that somebody who bought into something and they took something that ends up rubbing off on somebody else. But I mean, I don't I don't believe there was a there. There was no spike protein.
No.
And
No, it's
but
all,
anyway,
yeah,
the whole idea
cartoon
of
characters.
shedding, and maybe it's just assigning blame on an it's a dead end. We shouldn't go there. But I did want to kind of get your take on shedding, the whole idea of it. Maybe there is some resonance between people.
Well, there's definitely resonance between people. And it can be used for good or for evil. And so somebody that's in a resonance of evil or negativity or wanting to destroy, you can feel it, you can sense it. My personal understanding is when I have patients that had chemo, I did not want to sit around them. I did not want to be next to them. And there are specific instructions for chemo patients going home. They want, like, I don't know what that is. It drives me crazy and I don't know how to turn it off. Like if I do this, or I think the heart, anyway, yeah, see? I hate Zoom. I got to figure out how to turn it off. I say that every time. But I don't like to sit around them because they are off-gassing poison. They were injected with it, they are radiated with it, and it's coming off their body. And there's instructions to use a separate toilet or to, have it cleaned afterwards after they use it. So they are releasing toxins. So all of these, nobody knows what was in them. And I think they're all different. I don't even think that was the point. They've been using that for the beginning of time. So whether it's to slow poison, whether it's to create fear, whatever it is, if somebody was injected with poison, they will be off-gassing it. They will be releasing it out of every possible orifice, whether they're going, urinating, defecating, sweating, vomiting, coughing, the body's trying to get rid of it in one way or another. So whether you can receive symptoms from that, like hives, or feel sick, to be around, like a sick animal or a sick human, that's the unknown. Like what is actually happening that's making the other person experience a set of symptoms similar to the person that's shedding or, had the chemo or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense of any explanation that I've heard. And I remember in 2021 when that was yet another thing in the alternative media, that it was like, oh, don't be near the people who got the jab because they're shedding. And I remember even talking to people in the, quote unquote freedom community or truther community who, oh, if that person took it, I can't be around them. They're a danger to me.
Yeah.
They're going to shed all over me. And it just seems like another tactic for division. And to me, that was enough for me to figure out that was one more out that was thrown our way.
There was the interesting thing though with women and their periods. There was that and 70% increase in miscarriages. But it was just for the people that it had been. But the period thing, I think, was both this and not. So there were strange anomalies. I don't know.
Yeah, and we do know that women they sync up when they
sync
live
up
in close quarters anyway.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense. And there's a
So if there was something that had something to do with estrogen or, something to that effect, again, it was probably all different, but that could cause miscarriages, and it could cause other women having, losing their periods or having mega periods.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some older women, maybe perimenopausal and even menopausal, who resumed their cycles.
Yeah.
And not just from having the the poke, but being around people who did. So maybe that's in the ether, like we were talking about.
It could be in the ether. It could be in the ether. It could be in signaling, like you're signaling the other person, hey, I was just poisoned. And if you have any of that poison in your body, release it. Here's how to release it, or, something to that effect. But yeah, that's my best understanding, is that they're toxic when they're releasing. And I really I don't like to be around anyone that's, even people that eat fast food and drink sodas and lots of alcohol. You can kind of smell it off of them, and it's not pleasant. So that's kind of our intuition, or being a wild animal, just kind of perceiving your environment. Wild animals don't hang around other animals that are sick either.
True on all accounts. And I know that we've got past the hour mark here, and I think that at some point we're going to have to do a part 2 here, because this has been a great conversation. But Robin, I would just love to hear. I mean, you got to know that there's people on your side cheering you on for calling out the grifters and calling out the people who deserve to be, have the light shown on them. Can you give us a sneak preview, what's up next? Because I remember reading in one of your articles that, you had withdrawn from your regular day job so you can, speak your truth and without any fear. What's coming down the pipeline, if you feel comfortable at least sharing something at a high level?
I'll share this, but it is the scariest one that I've ever done. And I'm going hard into cancer, how they diagnose it to start with, because I think that is where the majority of the scam lies. And then we're going to go into the grifters in that category. But yeah, I think the whole industry, we've been just believing, we just say, okay, the person has cancer. We don't really ask, how do you know? What blood markers? And why are we always piercing the encapsulation, the tumor, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go into probably a 3-part series on that. And the gentleman that wrote The Root Cause of Cancer, that has been after me, threatening legal issues, and I haven't done anything wrong. I've just expressed my opinion, and why his book is not in alignment with how to actually heal from anything. They go more in the German New Medicine, like everything stems from a stress or a trauma or a shock, and just heal that and you're fine.
Well, I look forward to reading that, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing. And again, I think that just speaks to, you can't poison yourself to health. And so many people have been caught in that trap and are worse for the wear, unfortunately. So thanks in advance for that article, and hopefully it gets shared broadly and widely.
Well, thank you, PJ. Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate it. You guys are great. And it's just, thank you for the accolades, because again, I feel like I'm just me against the world, and everyone hates me at some point.
Well, we'd have
pursuit, right?
So, yeah.
Truth is a lonely warrior, I guess, is the saying.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we'd love to have this conversation again, or whatever makes sense, but you've got 2 allies here right behind you.
Thanks, and right back at you guys.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps up this week's episode. It was a really great conversation. Thanks again, Robin, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you. You guys too.
Thank you for joining us for another incredible episode of the Medicine Girl podcast, where our mission is to ignite the power within so you can hear your divine wisdom and follow your soul's true north. Fear is loud. Peace is quiet. Listen to the softest voice. We are all walking each other home.
But so my younger siblings have not spoken to me since 2020. And so I've extended, I keep extending the olive branch. I extended it to my sister, and I'm really sorry if anything I said upset you, because I offered to pay her $1,000 to read a couple books before she her 12-year-old son. And I'm going to replace all those, I can't say the B word on my podcast now. They're so on me. But, so I said, I'm really sorry if I upset you. I love you. Can we just at least, we don't have to talk about any of that other stuff, but, we have this history. I would just love to be in contact with you. And she said, no.
Yeah.
She said no, and I don't feel that it's safe to maintain a relationship with you.
That's sad.
I know. I know.
It's just
Really
so
sad.
unnecessary that all this stuff has gotten between families,
I know. That's the worst
flesh and
part about
blood.
it.
Yeah.
But I think that was by design.
Yeah.
You know, it really,
Any way they can divide, right?
right. And I think more and more I'm seeing it wasn't just necessarily this thing, right? More than it was to create the understanding of compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really about because now all it is this climate agenda.
Oh yeah.
And even when I read, because everyone was pushing me to read Arthur Furstenberg, Invisible Rainbow,
Mm-hmm.
so I finally read that, and I felt like that was just a really large piece of propaganda. And turns out Furstenberg is really pushing the climate agenda. So
Right.
maybe just a precursor before they roll all that out. I just got a notification from our garbage company that it's mandatory that we have now these green bins and we have to throw our food scraps in it. We can't compost ourselves.
Wow.
We have to, and it said even if it's just a handful of kitchen scraps, you're required to put it in the green bin. And it wasn't the garbage company's law; it's a California law.
Mm-hmm. Like an EPA or whatever it is.
But it's packaged in like, hey, we're really trying to save the world from these greenhouse gases, these runaway greenhouse gases. Has nothing to do with the fact that you can't grow food on your own property without composting and the soil that they sell in California. I don't know if you bought it. It will not penetrate water past the 2 inches. So you think you're watering, and then I have videos that I've done it, and then I'll dig underneath it, and it's only penetrated the first 1.5, 2 inches of water. And so none of the roots are really getting water.
What?
It's like
And
got
that's what
silicone
you
on
get at
it.
nurseries or whatever. That's like the only thing you
Nurseries,
can buy
Home
on the
Depot,
market.
Lowe's, and then there was one nursery here. I got the 2 big bins of soil, great. And then the next year it had whatever that stuff is, and it doesn't get the water. So now I'm forced to, which is better, make my own soil,
Mhm.
compost and the yard waste and leaves. And I really would like to go get some in the forest.
Yeah.
But okay, let's stick to the plan. So I
Sure.
really do like to kind of keep it conversational,
Yeah, good. Seeing.
and then just we can have you guys just introduce yourself, and we can just kind of see where it kind of takes off from there. Hi, Paul.
Hey, how are you, Robin?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I've been excited about this conversation. I'm sure David has said the same, or Jake is his online personality.
Okay,
Yeah,
Jake.
we stick to the pod gnome to podcast on here. And
Yeah.
I changed my screen name accordingly.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I should. Does it matter, David? Did you take control of the recording?
I can record. Robin's recording already, but
Oh, okay.
can we
Yeah. Can I use it for my
request to
podcast too?
Yeah,
yeah, we
absolutely.
can
That'd be
both.
great.
Okay, can we both record?
Let me see if I can
Yes. Let
rename.
me approve.
Okay.
Should go through.
Yeah.
There we go.
So I had an idea, speaking of just Robin just mentioned she likes to keep it conversational, which is totally down our alley, up our alley, whatever. Um, and I mean, Paul and I started this whole thing because we're like, I think the world has a ways to catch up to people, and I'm including you, Robin, in our company and or us in your company. And that's like people who have woken up to certain agendas and who would be placed in the whole conspiracy type topic, that realm. We don't want to be just doing the mental masturbation of talking. And we're beyond that. And so our thing is like, okay, the world is excused. It's Berkeley, downtown Berkeley. So um if I am talking later and there's some chaos going on. I'll mute myself. Anyway, so our, I think our founding, the germination of our podcast was that it's a world of deception. We're being told narratives. That's why we're called Reframe the Narratives. Everything is a narrative, everything's a story. And so you get into like the topic of the day might be like Epstein or something like that. Like whatever gets to us when it's through the media and all that, it's we don't know. We just
Right.
don't know. And that's why I call myself discerning Jake. I'm just trying to exercise a little discernment. I'm not trying to like tell people to go down rabbit holes or what the truth is. And I noticed in your writing and every way you represent yourself, I think we're very aligned in that. And Agent 13, 17, 11 is the same kind of thing. He's like, I'm just finding this shit out,
Right.
and this is what I'm sharing. So I think that's the premise for how we started. And and like I said, I think the world has yet to kind of catch up with us. They're still putting us in the conspiracy realm, but we're not. We're like, well, we're being told a bunch of lies. We got to figure out the truth for ourselves. And we can talk about this on mic. But anyway, I think that might be a good
That's
kind of
huge. Yeah. I have
a,
about 15
a
things I can say
foundation.
about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Robin, just for so I know how to introduce what we're about to do here. I mean, I usually say welcome to this episode of Reframing the Narrative, but would you like us to say like we're doing a joint Reframing the Narrative and Medicine Girl podcast, or how would you prefer I
Yeah.
introduce
Yeah.
that?
Let's just do that because
Yeah.
then
Cool.
we're all introduced and we don't have to do too much editing.
Okay, great. That sounds awesome. Okay, well, time is of the essence. I think we have a sense of what we're doing here. So should I kick it off?